Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
We have a mystery
How's
guest.
it going?
Good.
How's it going?
Good. Things are going well. I came up with a really cool design yesterday, and I showed a little bit of it on Instagram yesterday. I came up with this cool latching system. I'm working for one of the whiskey companies, and they wanted me to come up with like a recycled package for their new bottle. And everything has to be recycled these days. And I started working on this box, so I showed that. So I'm excited. I was just texting about it moments before we started, so that's why it's fresh on my mind with the client, and they really like it. And there's a good budget to make 50 of them, so I'm excited about that. So you'll be seeing more of that.
50 of the same thing?
Yeah, because it's a product release, so they'll send it out to all the taste testers all around the globe, maybe even more. It's a big product launch for a new product from Bullet. Big product launch, so it's exciting to be involved at the ground floor making the package. So last night I just improvised. They basically said it just has to be recycled material. So I improvised last night and came up with something cool. It's the latching system, because I make these boxes from time to time, and then you put the hardware on it, and the hardware never looks as cool as the box. And so it's like, let me play around with leather, because there's leather scraps everywhere. And I came up with this latching system, which is something I've seen somewhere else, and I applied it to this. It's like a leather hasp with like a slip of leather that locks it. So you guys will be seeing more of that. I'll probably do a video on the production of these. So that's exciting. That's just fresh on my mind, so I didn't mean to hijack the conversation. Happy Christmas.
No. I think that's cool. I mean, it's interesting when, we solve problems all the time, we make things all the time, and it does get a little bit blasé, I think, sometimes. But when something like that, you do it, and you're like, oh, cool. Yeah. That excitement is, I don't know, it's not unique, but it's like a high spot in the road, and that's nice.
As a matter of fact, late last night, I was working till about 10 o'clock. I hand cut a couple of samples of the idea. I was like, you know what, this would look really a little bit more refined if I laser cut it. And so I went up to the house, made the file, then I went over to the laser cutter, which is 3 miles away, and I laser cut it up. And I was like, well, on there, let me put the logo on the front. So I checked with the client, and he's like, sure. And then I went back and pulled the artwork off the internet, made some of the artwork that doesn't exist already, just from a photograph, and went back in and did the whole thing. So I'm like a week ahead of schedule. I planned on doing all this after Christmas. So I was just so in the groove last night. I was like, let me go make this leather hardware. So I made hinges and the latch at the same time.
The way you said that, sorry to totally distract from what you just said. Yeah. The way you said that makes me picture your laser out in the middle of a field 3 miles away. It's just like, I keep it over there in that
surrounded by
like
pickup
10
trucks.
other lasers that are just surrounding it. Yeah.
It's surrounded by pickup trucks. It's in a cloister.
So a couple weeks ago, remember I was talking about the little 3D printed drive slot thing that I made?
Yeah.
So I made a reel about that. And I was excited about it because I made the reel right as I got this thing working. And that reel has done very well for me on Instagram, which is surprising. But the biggest comment on it was, your excitement is contagious.
Yeah.
Something like that, where people are like, it's so cool to see a person really excited about a solution to a problem. And I think it energizes people to see that you can make a thing and then be really excited about it, and it serves a purpose. Of course, there's always the naysayers and stuff, but majority of the people had that reaction, and I think it's the same kind of thing. The reason I'm bringing that up is because with you, if you're making a thing, if you find a solution that is exciting to you, it will be exciting to other people just because of they can see it make a difference in your attitude and stuff. So I think that's cool.
Yeah,
and it's hard to create that. It's hard to like, you know what, I'm going to make something really cool today that I think is cool so that other people will be excited too. Like, you can't decide to do that, I don't think. But anyway, it was neat to see. So
I'm going to look. I'm looking for your post.
Oh, it's not that interesting of a post, but I just mean that that excitement, that you naturally get when you solve a problem. I think a lot of times, for me anyway, that happens in the shop with no camera on and no, it's just like, it's a moment and then it passes on. I don't think about capturing it, but I think this one particular reel was evidence that it can be useful to other people. Your excitement can be useful for other people to actually like dive in to try to solve something themselves.
Look at that fit. So nice.
Aren't you excited?
I am. I'm very excited. I get to see it. What's funny, I'm not listening to it, but your eyebrows are raised the whole time, which makes me know that you're engaged.
That's a trick. That's a trick right there to a hot reel.
Yeah.
Eyebrows?
Eyebrows.
Your eyebrows are up.
Cool.
They're like this.
I got crazy eyebrows. They're always up. So, anyway.
I got
David,
another.
what about you? Are you excited about anything?
Okay, I'll tell you after.
Oh, well, go ahead, Jimmy. You already...
No. It's pointless. It's pointless.
Well, I am finishing up a vanity cabinet that's getting installed in the rental house today, and I wasn't really excited about it because it was going to be a smaller version of something that I made before. And then Kelly and I were brainstorming, like, what can we do to the doors to make this a little bit more interesting? And I was like, have we ordered a shower curtain yet? She's like, no, we'll order one now. And so the design on the shower curtain inspired the design on the door, which seems weird because shower curtain is not a permanent thing, but doors don't have to be permanent either. So I took this design off the shower curtain and kind of modified it a little bit, and then CNC'd some grooves into the door, and then filled that with epoxy. And then the handles for the door come from this design too. And so the handles on the two cabinet doors are offset from each other, which I've never seen on cabinet doors. So I think something that was really simple came out really, really good. So that's getting installed today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
And it went together so fast. Like we started. I thought I had a piece of cherry plywood for the project. I didn't. So when my brother showed up Monday morning, we had to go to the plywood store to get one. So we didn't even start the project till 10 a.m. We had the cabinet glued up and drying by lunchtime, and then the rest of the time was sanding, finishing, and then the doors took up an entire day. But it's funny when you draw something up and plan it out, how quickly things can go together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
So there was that, and then I made Kelly's Christmas gift, which is basically a tub shelf. So we had a bathroom renovation a year ago, and she wants a tub shelf so she can just relax and have her iPad. So I made one that has two little wings, and it dips down a little bit lower, then has a little pocket cut out for an iPad holder. I found an iPad holder on Amazon. It's like an aluminum one, and it holds its position. It's getting epoxied in there. And then on the back side, since this thing is so big, like, what do you do with it when you're not using it? It's going to hang on the wall, and the back side will be showing. And so I made the backside a kind of like I did this artwork. So it's a bunch of kind of like random shapes with random colors in there, CNC'd out the shapes and then filled it with epoxy. So it's kind of like when people buy skateboards for their look and then just hang them on the wall. It's kind of like that, but cooler than skateboards.
Cooler than skateboards.
Cooler than skateboards, yeah. And so that is almost done. So that one's not going to come out until after Christmas. And then I'm finishing up. I got 3 videos that are almost done. And so this third one is it's a dialing jig for a company called Dialmax. And over the last year or so, I've done a couple of videos, different Festool domino options for people who don't want to buy a domino. A couple of them were good. A couple of them were just complete garbage. And so I didn't set out to do a whole series on loose tenon joinery, but I now have a whole series on loose tenon joinery. And so far, like this Dialmax jig has worked better than anything. Like it's a pretty nice system. It looks super complicated when you get it, and I was like, I'm never going to use something that is this complicated. But once you kind of wrap your mind around it, it works flawlessly.
Is that the one that makes the 3 holes?
It's got 5 holes, and so there's a clamp built into it, so you can just clamp it to your board. You can drill your holes, and then it also has a pin system. So if you need to go longer than the width of the jig, you can move the jig over to the last hole, stick your pin in there, and then keep drilling.
Mm-hmm.
And which is nice. And then you can also do longer boards. It comes with this longer gauge pin system, so you can have like a foot between each hole.
Could you say the name of it again? I'm going to Google it.
Dalmax.
Ooh,
one word. I believe they're out of Canada. And it works really, really good. It looks complicated because there's a lot of parts to it. And I hate things with a lot of parts. It's sort of like the Incra iBox jig. Yeah. I won't use it anymore. It's just too complicated. I have to watch a video every time. But it's not as complicated as it looks.
You know, so we've talked about that jig before, the Incra one. And I think we all have the same experience with it. Maybe one of us or somebody should write down the basic steps that it takes to use that jig and put it on a little tiny piece of paper and like laminate it and just stick it to the jig. That way when we go to use it, it's like, oh look, there's 4 steps. This is the things I do.
Right. It's
I haven't done that, but we probably should.
I made a video on how to use it probably 6 years ago, and so that's the video. I just watched my own video. But I have a homemade finger joint jig that I made that took like 5 minutes, and I can just pull that out, and it's just easier.
Yeah,
and takes up less.
It's been a while since I've had to do finger joints. I don't have to do them often enough to even like keep the. I've made those jigs before, but I don't keep them because
you just make another one.
Do this again, and I throw it away, and then.
This is it.
That is it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, speaking of tools, I have like things that you're not going to use very often. I just ordered some stuff that I probably will use one time. Basically, can you see this guitar on the floor behind me here?
No.
It's just an acoustic. It's an Ibanez acoustic. So my wife works in a little juice shop, and a friend of hers owns. And I went in there to pick her up yesterday, and there was a guitar on a stand. And they were closed, and I was like, oh, cool, while I'm waiting, I'll pick up this guitar and play a little bit. And it was way out of tune. So I started tuning it, and I got it in tune, and then, it's doing that weird thumbs up thing again in the video.
I saw that.
I didn't even put my thumb up, and it just... Anyway, so I tuned it, and then went to play it, and then it went out of tune. And so I'm thinking all the normal guitar stuff and everything.
The neck snapped.
No, the bridge is separating... Here, I'll just show you. So, the bridge is separating from the body.
It's pulling out. Oh, yeah, that's common for those kind of older guitars like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can see that it's still connected down there. There's a couple of dowels that run through, like right here, that are still in place, but it's just pulling away the glue, just like I don't know anything about this guitar, the history of it or anything. So I asked the lady that owns it if she knew someone who could fix it for her. I showed her what the problem was. And she was like, oh, I don't know anybody. And I said, well, I can give it a shot if you want. And so then I came home, and I'm thinking, yeah, you just pry that off, clean the surfaces, put on some sort of special glue. I'm sure they have bridge glue or something. And so I researched it a little bit, found a really nice StuMac video about replacing a bridge on an acoustic. And it can be that simple, but it's not that simple. So there's a caul, I think is what they call it. This like block with it's a block with the ends with like screw pressure points. So you put this block on the bridge after you clean it and everything. To put it back on, you just use Titebond. And then you put this caul over it. You clamp through the sound hole to the middle of the caul to hold that, and then you screw down the 2 sides individually to actually press the wings of the bridge down. And so you're adding like basically 3 points of pressure instead of just 1 in the center, because it's not a solid block. The bridge has like a scoopy wing kind of shape to it. So you're basically making clamps to fill those little depressions and the wing shapeness of it. And so, I'm like watching this StewMac video. StewMac stuff's great. Their equipment's great and everything. And I'm just trying to fix this thing for a friend. And so I like click their links to their products and I'm like, oh, the call is $198. Oh, the little reamer to ream out the holes again is like $75. I'm like, oh, that, okay. I have Type Bond. So basically I went on Amazon and looked for cheap versions of all of those same things because I know I'm going to use them once. And she actually doesn't care about this guitar, so if I do something wrong, it's not the end of the world. But I thought it was a good opportunity for me to try something. And so I'm trying to find reasonably cheap tools that are made to do that job rather than just like hacking it with the clamps that I already have on hand. I'm not going as cheap as possible, but I also don't want to spend hundreds of dollars to fix somebody's guitar. This is probably not worth $100.
You may want to search Temu for an alternative to that call.
Well, the one that I got is a solid maple. I mean, it functionally is the same, but instead of being like powder coated steel like the StewMac one is, it's made of solid maple, and so I think it's already on the way. And the little ream is the interesting part that I learned a lot of stuff about acoustic guitars yesterday that I didn't know. The pinholes, the holes where the pins drop in to hold the string in, have different degrees. There's a 3 degree and a 5 degree, and there's probably other ones too, but those are 2 common degree, wedge shapes. And so depending on what kind of guitar you have a different degree, which means you have to get a different reamer to go down there and ream that at the same angle so that the pins will drop in the same. So it's kind of an interesting, like, oh, I never even considered that would be different or whatever. But as you glue the bridge back on, you get a little bit of glue squeeze out in those holes, which changes the fit of the pin. So then you have to go back and you don't really take out any wood with the reamer. You kind of burnish the inside shape of it so that the pin will drop in all the way.
Those are the pins that hold the end of the string, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they're just like a plastic, little pin. So... I skipped everything except for that reamer and the call. I think I have enough other clamping mechanisms and stuff to do the rest of it and clean it and all that. But the guy just used like Type Bond 1 to glue it down, and it was a really good video. I should link that video today just in case anybody needs it. But it was a good, simple walkthrough. But
more complicated than I expected it to be.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, that's why I took it home. I'm like, how hard could this be? It's gluing some wood together.
It looks simple from the outside.
I should probably look this up just to be safe. It's somebody else's guitar. And then I'm like, oh, wow.
It's funny you mentioned that because a couple weeks ago, I have a Martin acoustic, the cheapest Martin acoustic that you can get, but I think they're all guaranteed for life. And I hadn't played it in a few months. And I realized like the action seems higher than normal. And the first thing you do is you check the bridge and everything. It looks fine. Looking it up online, I'm like, oh, it probably needs a truss rod adjustment. Oh, it's just a 5mm wrench. And I'm like, oh, but it still takes a special tool because it's so far into the sound hole that it needs this long thing with a little handle. So I ordered the special tool. And it arrives, and then I make an adjustment. I'm like, oh, that is much better. And now I'm getting fret buzz, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to mess with this anymore. I'm just going to take this to somebody and have somebody else set it up. Because it's a whole thing of going back and forth and loosening the strings and tighten. I don't have time for this.
And it's all it's like tuning a guitar in that it's all dependent on the work that you're doing in any given moment. So as you tighten one, you're loosening the others essentially, or whatever. So it's like you have to recheck and they're kind of a pain in the butt. So anyway, I'm gonna be messing with that. I hope I don't think I can mess it up.
What's the worst that could happen?
I mean, it already doesn't work, so I can't make it not work more than it currently doesn't work, I think.
Well, that's kind of what happens when you have a public guitar sitting out in space. Everyone keeps tuning it, and then the bridge is like ready to explode because you have like a lot of non-guitar people.
Yeah,
and
she doesn't play guitar either, so she doesn't have the context to know that it's right or wrong or in tune or out or whatever. So yeah.
Bob, did you find a taker for the piano?
No luck on the piano yet. I've posted it on Facebook a few times with different kind of, like 2 different people in different places. I did get some feedback from people about auction houses and historical societies and stuff, which I've tried a lot of the historical places around town already. But no real takers yet, just some more leads. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. Some of the recommendations were like Paul Mayette said, take it to a boys' club or a girls' club, something where kids could use it. And while the sentiment is good there, it's not the kind of thing that kids should sit down and just like bang on. You know what I mean? It's an antique, like it's a piece of history, and it could do, if it needs to just go to a place like that and live there, that's fine. But I think it probably has a better purpose somewhere where it's more intentional for that type of piano. Like somebody said, ask your piano teacher if they know any families who just need a piano, any kids who are starting out. And yes, I would love for somebody just to have it that needs it, but it also weighs like 800 pounds, and it's not a thing you're just going to, on a weekend, move into your living room and then decide in 6 months that you don't want it anymore. It's a bigger commitment, so no luck yet.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's like trying to give away a pet elephant.
Yeah.
It's free.
Very much like that.
That common scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I posted the bell video this weekend. I was trying to think if anybody, maybe somebody in the audience could remember when I first started talking about that with me. Bob, you said make one for me. I'm going to make, now that I have the tech, I'm going to make a smaller bell, something a little bit more, like maybe the one I made in the video is 8 inches high by 8 inches wide. I'm going to make something that's more around 5 inches high, 5 inches wide, something a little bit smaller, a little bit more sturdy to cast. And well, the funny thing was, since I posted the video, and the span of me working on the video starts in the end of July and goes all the way until the other night when I presented it at the New York Explorers Club. For those of you that didn't see the video, I kind of kept it a secret. The video was to honor 2 of the guys that died in the Titan, which is the submersible that went down to the Titanic, that exploded, and Paul Henry Nargelet and Hamish Harding were 2 of the guys that belonged to the New York Explorers Club. And my buddy Mike was part of the club, and when they talked about doing the ceremony, traditionally there should be a bell. And so Mike said, remember you keep talking about casting a bell? Why don't you make a bell? And so that's how that story started, and it's all in the video if you haven't seen it. And the funny thing, though, is since I posted the video during this week, I must have found 5 or 6 notes, including I was showing somebody how the iPad works and how you could play back a video that you drew. You guys know how the iPad in Procreate, you could go back and play back the timeline of what you drew in that file.
Oh, yeah.
And what I was using the iPad for a lot, and I still do occasionally, is I make lists, and then I screen grab them, and then I send them to my phone. So I do a handwritten list, and so many ways of making notes.
Yeah.
I do a handwritten list, and then I save it, and then I use the file. Then I delete it all, and then I use the same page. So the other night I was showing a friend, and I played it back, and the very first thing it said, cast a bell, build a go-kart. And it was a whole list of things that it was all handwritten. So the animation of it, all the things I was thinking of.
Nice, yeah.
And then I screen grabbed it or took a picture of it and then deleted it. And then it went to 2 other lists. And then it ended up the drawing that was cool. the drawing that was living on the page. So I was like, look how long ago I was thinking about making a bell. So that was at least 2 years ago. And then I found scraps of paper. I opened the notebook. So it's funny how the universe is reminding me, hey, remember you wanted to make a bell? Well, you did it. It's just keep reminding me that I postulated about this and then I did it. So I'm so happy that that's behind me. It was such an accomplishment for me mentally and physically. And the one thing about it is how I procrastinated for so long until I had a real purpose. And obviously the purpose was very honorable. Okay, everybody thinks billionaires are idiots for going down to the submersible, but that's a different story. A lot of the comments is that kind of comment engagement. But sure. The idea that it's for an honorable thing, which obviously is cool. But more importantly, a friend says, I need something. And my buddy Mike, we're always doing each other favors. And so that's really where the fire to complete it came from. And I don't know if there's a subject there or a conversation, but why do we procrastinate on something so long until the moment that something else interjects to take that procrastination away? But I also mentioned in the video in a lot of why.
For me, it's like I'll wait to the last second to do something because I think the ultimate idea is I'm just waiting for the inspiration to strike. I'm waiting for that ultimate idea. I might have something in mind to execute whatever, but if I wait on it just a little bit longer, if I wait on it till the night before to start something, I'm going to have the
best version of it.
The perfect design. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in my video, I talk about it, and I know it. I identify it, and I've said it 100 times on this podcast. It was fear. It was just basic fear-based procrastination that I was going to do it wrong. I was going to waste materials. I spent several $1,000s getting this video done. I can't even imagine $500 just in the bronze alone that I got on eBay. When I finally, after we cast a couple, and I realized throwing bullet shells and bits and pieces of bronze and brass and screws and keys into the thing, you don't end up with the purest pour. You end up with a lot of porosity, and that's holes and Swiss cheese parts of your casting. So that one bell that I came out okay, and then I was like, let's do a better one. So then I ended up using some pure bronze that I got on eBay. Long story short, I ended up spending a lot of money, but I just kept saying this is the education that I've needed to do this, and this is the education I feared jumping into, because I don't want to fail. And I have videos. People always say, do you ever not finish a video? There's probably 10 videos in the last 10 years that I started and just didn't finish because the net result wasn't that exciting, or it was lackluster, or it completely failed altogether. I made this whole video about a fence for a client. I made a trade with this guy, and he's like, can you make a fence? One of my clients. So I went and I bought the same steel and everything, and I made this fence for somebody. And then I never got the beauty shot because the client didn't like it. It wasn't exactly the same metal. They basically wanted this gate, so I made this gate and this like a piece that would extend, and I gave it to the guy to install. It was a trade, so the installer was the client, but his client didn't like the net result, and I thought it looked exactly the same. They didn't. The client was very stickly, so I said to him, I go, did you ever get beauty shots at that thing? He goes, I was too embarrassed to tell you. The client rejected it. He goes, so did you get somebody else to make the fence? He goes, no, they just said forget it. Because they realized they have this like expensive cast iron fence. And to get something that looks exactly like that, you would have had to go back in time to whoever made that cast iron fence. He said they were being real sticklers about it having to look exactly the same. And he tried to tell him there's no way it could look exactly the same unless it was made by the same guy. It was in the 98th percentile, but the texture of the metal, they didn't like it. So they said, so I made this whole video and I just never did anything with it. So that was the same fear that was kind of lingering around the bell. I was like, I'm going to get down there and I'm going to, and the failure that I had, if Mike wasn't involved, I might have just said, well, this is the first one I tried. It didn't work. That's where the video ends. But because we had the ceremony lingering, the ceremony was originally going to be in September, but then they moved it to December. So that bought me more time to keep trying. And in the video, the last one I make, which is the most successful one, which, long story short too, I misspelled the gentleman's name on there like an idiot. That's another story. But that last one, I made the whole thing in one day. So all the tech I was learning up until that moment was months of experimenting and learning and procrastination. I did the whole thing in one day. So now I feel like I could make anything in one day. I can make a bell in one day.
I think the thing, listening to you talk about that, I think the thing, how do I say this, that needs, when we have a good idea, or we have an idea, we have a desire, and then it just sits, it doesn't actually take off until you have like a catalyst. And that catalyst is sometimes, I think most often for me, that catalyst is a local kind of internal frustration. Like, I don't know what to do with this pile of stuff. And so the catalyst is irritation. And that irritation gives me enough fuel to follow through on I should design that big container for all of these things that I've been talking about or whatever. The Karmann Ghia is a good example. I wanted to do a Karmann Ghia forever, since high school. It's been, and I would talk about it all the time. And one time for Christmas, probably 5 years ago or something, Josh and Anthony used my own money to buy me a brand new Karmann Ghia steering wheel and like badges, one of which stays on my desk right here as a reminder. They just for Christmas they gave me pieces of a Karmann Ghia that I didn't own, and they were like, "Here you go. Now you have no reason not to do the thing." And that was enough of a catalyst.
That's cool. That's really
that
cool.
I was like, "Oh, maybe I should actually look for a car, or see at least what it's just take a step toward the thing that I've been talking about doing forever." And it took a little while, but then all of a sudden I was like, I found a car. Yes, let's do that. And then I got the car, and then it just. But without somebody, that external catalyst of pushing me toward action rather than just talking about it, I don't think that I would have actually done that. It's the same thing for you. You had somebody external to you that needed a thing that happened to line up with something you had thought about for a long time, and it was just It was enough to get you to actually follow through, get past that fear. But I think a lot of times that thing that gets you moving is, for me, is in local, not internal, but it's right here in my house. It's a need. And so so my basement, I've told you that I'm redoing our basement for the kids. I think, have I told you about that?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just redoing the whole basement. And the catalyst for it, I've been thinking about that for a while, but the catalyst was one day just watching my kids be teenagers and going oh man, they're leaving soon. They're not going to be here that much longer. What can I do to give them a reason to be, not to stay here, but to be here while they're here, while they're still at home? What can I do to give them something that they can be together and be with us and stuff? I'm like, oh, well, the basement. Okay, that's a good enough reason for me to finally do something that I've been thinking about doing for 6 years since we moved in here. So I think there's a lot of those local catalysts that happen and we don't even think about it, but it's the thing that pushes us toward action on any of these things. My opinion.
Yeah, it always helps to have a catalyst.
Yeah.
And paying customer is always very nice when you have a
sure.
deal.
Yeah, that's another one.
I could explain. I didn't really explain it well, but it took me a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking to figure out how I misspelled the gentleman's name at the end. So if you go back to the beginning of September, the beginning of end of July, August, when I started making the original one that I made in Styrofoam, and then I applied laser etched letters to it, I accidentally mistyped 2 T's for the gentleman's last name. And when I laser cut it, and I applied the letters to the bell that I thought were going to be raised for the final casting, which that part didn't work out, I just didn't use the last T. I was like, oh, there's no... I realized I checked, and it was really just a typo error. I knew how to spell his name, but I just hit T twice, and so in the final file, when I laser etched it, I was like, oh, whatever, I just don't... So if you go back and look at me applying the cardboard letters to the bell, you could see the extra T in the cutout. So then when it came time to metal etch it, I went back to that same file, copied and pasted out of it, and started a new Illustrator file with the curve in it so that it would apply. And both times I didn't eliminate the T from the original accident. Because it had been so much time, I forgot. And I had such tunnel vision on just trying to get this thing done and try and make sure that I was taking care of all the things on the checklist except for the spelling. And Mike knew that I misspelled it, but he didn't tell me until after the ceremony. He didn't want to embarrass me. And him and Richard Garriott, who's a couple of people recognize him. He's a very big game developer. Him and Richard came to me afterward. They're like, "We're so honored you did this. It was really thanks, but you did misspell Nargalet." I'm like, "What? What? No way! What are you talking about?" They're like, "No, we're not kidding. We're not kidding." I'm like, "What?" And I looked at him and I immediately remembered that I had this confusion about the 2 T's in the beginning, and it didn't occur to me until that point. And I said I could take it because the second etch the most successful bell. The etch wasn't deep. I said, I could polish the T out. It's at the very end. I could polish. They're like, nope. We actually really, the one thing about the Explorers Club is that the members are all very quirky. And they're all bragging about their accomplishments, and they're all very eccentric. And they loved the fact, in fact, those two guys both said, don't worry about it. We love the fact that it's quirky and that it's not perfect. And that and it's a funny story. It's part of the Explorers mystique is that there's always crazy stories with everything, right? And then I met the director as I was leaving, the director of everything, who has a bell collection of all things. He's like this. He has like the 5th bell ever made in Europe in his possession. It's like crazy. It's like made in the 1400s or something. And he was opening his phone. And he was going through, show me. He goes, don't for 1 second feel bad. He goes, people make mistakes like this all the time in the bell business. He goes,
in the
he
biz.
goes, a common thing to do is to fill it in with lead if you have a misdecoration or a misetch. And I go, well, I still do want to try and make it again. He says, it's not necessary, but that's up to you. If you want to make it again and correct the spelling. And so I might actually do it again just to get more of the tech and the learning in. And so that's my bell story. But I'm really glad I accomplished that. And there's almost like a vacuum. It's like, what's next? So it's like I went from the boat, think of all these sort of like lily pad projects for me is like making the rowboat and the bell, and I don't know if there was anything in between. Oh, the pool table for me this year was a huge accomplishment. And it was another fear-based thing because all the specific tech that goes into making a pool table, I didn't want to mess it up. The very intimate details of where the pockets live and the bumpers and the curves and the angles and all that stuff. So yeah, that's just the SALT tactic, is just not confronting the details and the high tech.
What do you think's next?
I'm thinking about that. I've been wanting to. I have an 86 Chevy flatbed. It's sitting right near the garage. I brought it over here this summer. We're talking to Scott Crabtree. He's going to help me do a wrap on it. And I've been talking to him about that since we met in person in Louisville a year and a half ago. And I think I might bring it inside. I just got to figure out what to do with the pool table. I might trade places. I put the pool table in the backyard and put the truck inside.
Nice.
I'll put a really good cover on it. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have to bring the truck in from the other side. But actually, the barn is closed up.
It's a flatbed, though, right? So why don't you put the pool table on the flatbed, and then you have a mobile pool table?
The project is to take the project is to remove the bed and rebuild it. So that's the project.
As a
I
pool
could
table.
make the flatbed a pool table. No, I'm going to take the bed of the truck off because it's really rotted. It's a rotted mess that was applied to the truck after it was bought. It wasn't the original bed. It was just like, it was probably like the 4th life that it's lived on the back of this truck. If the truck is a 1984, the bed is probably from the 60s. That's how rotted it is. And I'm going to take that off and remake a brand new bed. So I got some choices, but that's the process is what am I going to do? Where am I going to do it? So I definitely have to do it inside because of the winter. And yeah, so I got some.
You could
things
make
to
it an
check
actual bed, and then like it could be your shop bed, and it could just be parked in the shop. And anytime you want to take a nap, you just go plop in the back of your Chevy.
Don't tell anybody, but that's what the pool table's for.
It's
got a set of pillows and a comforter on it.
Yeah, a mattress that's fit just right on top of the...
The funny thing is during Maker Camp, and had lots of people coming in and around the house, and I prepped the pool table. I took the cover on all the piles of junk that was on. I usually use it to lay the leather out. So I took all the stuff off of the pool table, expecting everybody to have these like rounds of pool. Nobody touched it. Not one maker came near the pool table. We're all busy talking about tools the whole time. I was really surprised. I was like, come on, everybody want to play? And I was like, they're like, poke one ball and then put it down. Be like, cool, tell me about your bandsaw. I'm like,
which one?
Right.
That's funny. So I was thinking about something while we were talking about like solutions. I was actually thinking about how all of the things that you're talking about, the bell and the pool table and even that truck, like those are very your specific situation solutions. Like they are to specific problems. And I know we've talked about products and stuff a lot lately. Or not lately, but we've talked about products, making products forever. And I was thinking about this morning about how so many of the things that we do, we being me, do in videos are specific. They're solutions to my problem. And this one I'm starting to think about for the next couple of weeks is it's a solution to my problem, but I'm actively trying to make it a solution for other people's problems too. I don't know if I'm saying this well, but instead of just making it the way that I would do it for me and that being the end of it, I'm trying to like do that and then pause before I actually do any work and think, what steps could I take to make it a little bit more general, a little bit more useful to somebody else? Not that it's necessarily going to get sold, but just more as like a problem solving exercise than how do I generalize this just a little bit? Because I was thinking about how we solve problems, and everybody I think is capable of solving a problem that they have, but some people don't want to invest into what it takes to solve that problem. So they either don't have the tools, or they don't have the institutional knowledge, or they just don't have the initiative to do it. And that's why we drive other people's cars, right? That's why we don't build our own cars from scratch. So I was trying to think about a couple of things that I'm going to be working on over the next few months and how I can turn those into not necessarily products I would sell, but turn them into products from a generalized point of view. And I have some ideas specifically for this one, but it might be an interesting thing just to kind of throw around. Like, how do you take an idea and generalize it? How do you take an idea and make it past you?
I work the opposite way.
Immediate thoughts?
I take a general idea and I want to make this just for me.
I think I do that too. I think I'm just trying to think the other way.
Right.
So you're saying take a process and just distill it down to points, bullet points?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't really know. I think I'm like mid thought in this for this video, and so I'm not exactly sure how to ask the right question.
It's like you want to make a drawer organizer, but you want it to be for you, but you also want to make it so other people could do the same thing for them.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's a good point. I've talked about these little trays that I've been working on, and I could have stopped with that because they do exactly what I need them to do already, and that's it. But yeah, like are there small changes that I could make to this idea that then the two of you would go, oh yeah, I could use that too. And would those changes be drastic enough that it would take it away from being useful to me, or is it something that like is there a medium of becoming globally useful? Globally is maybe you know what I mean. And so I'm just trying to wondering if there is some sort of maybe like a process that could be developed around taking an idea that is specific, having a little outline of questions to ask about changing this into something that's more globally useful. I didn't know if you guys had any experience with that thought process and any.
I think a big part of a lot of the problems is where to get stuff and what is the right stuff. And obviously there's always YouTube, but I've been researching doing the next phase of my casting learning is to do the shell molds, which is how I should have done the bell from the beginning with a ceramic shell mold. And I had a really hard time figuring out the technology that I would need to go to that next step. So I finally spoke to my friend Mark at the Complete Sculptor. If anybody knows Mark Fields, Complete Sculptor is a place in Manhattan, but it's also global because they're a website. It's called sculpt.com. And I spoke with Mark. I've known Mark for years, and he guided me to the right stuff. So I have this slurry that comes in a 5-gallon bucket, and then you do a wax model and you dip it, and then you put the powder on it, and then you let it dry and you dip it. You do like 5 coatings, and then you bake the shell. But the one technology I haven't been able to find is how long is the baking process. It doesn't say it on the bucket. It doesn't say it on any of the literature I've been able to find. And everyone's like, oh, you take this and you just put it in the kiln. I'm like, what temperature? How long? What is the process? And it's you would assume it says it right on the bucket. This is the stuff. Bake it to this temperature. But there's something really interesting about how companies get non-committal about stuff like that. Like you notice how it's hard to find schedules on how to do certain laser cuts. In fact, I was even talking to, when I was friendly with Full Spectrum in the beginning, somebody that told me, we don't publish any of this stuff because we just let the user find the average and post about it. They don't say, if you're going to cut leather this thick, cut it at this speed. Because they say every piece of material is slightly different, so I kind of understand. But when it comes to this particular, when I can't find a specific thing about a specific thing, it's because they're non-committal about it. I don't understand why. It's got to be written somewhere, because somebody knows who to turn the kiln to. I'm going to ask Mark when I get right down to it what I need to do. But taking what you're saying is, you demystify the process, and then you can share the process. So, I mean, it's a lot of what we do in general.
Yeah,
demystifying the process. And
with that particular the example you just gave, is there like an institutional language that the only thing I can think of is like when you're doing pottery, you talk about cones, right?
Right. Yeah, cone 6 or cone 06.
Anybody outside of pottery would not have any idea what that means. So it's like an institutional verb, not a verb, but like there's language there that means certain things to people who understand the thing. Is there a language around the stuff that you're talking about that
That's
maybe you're looking for an explanation in the wrong language?
No, I just need to know what the temperature is.
Right, but I mean, is in that world, is there maybe like a, elephants? You just cook it for 4 elephants, and that means X thing at whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it would be cones, but nobody's committed to writing it down.
Okay.
But I haven't gotten that far yet. When I get there, I'm going to literally go and ask either the company technologist, because there is an access on the website for this particular model number of slurry, or I'm going to talk to Mark.
I'm wondering if there's an environmental issue where it's not just a like cook it at 1500 degrees or whatever it is, because maybe the humidity or temperature or materials, all those things affect it. One of the things, I've been using the CNC for the last couple projects, and I have totally just stopped worrying about feeds and speeds on the CNC. Whatever the default is for the
same with me. I don't.
And so here's my trick though, is I'm using UC CNC as my whatever controller for the machine. I will just start it off at 30%, and then I would just go by sound, and I'll slowly while the thing is running, I'll just raise it up until I think the speed sounds good, and then the spindle speed and so I don't even care. I don't even look up feeds and speeds anymore. I don't need to. I just start it off super slow and just ramp it up.
It's funny that's another bit of stuff that's like one of the things that really hampers people's jumping in. They're like, I don't know the feed, I don't know the speed. This reminds me of something I once heard Izzy say. Somebody told me Izzy said it, or maybe I heard Izzy say it. I can't remember, but he said he runs because Izzy's done lots of production. And you would only need to worry about what I'm about to say if you do production. If you're a hobbyist, who cares? You run it, whatever. But Izzy would run it until the bit snaps, doing test cuts, and then dial it back. So if the bit snaps at 100 times per X, he'd dial it back to 90. But he'd keep ramping it up until the bit snaps, and then he knows where to dial it back from. So he goes right to the pressure point and then comes back, and then he just runs his machine like that. So obviously that's for more production stuff if you're making lots and lots of parts. But if you're not making a lot of parts, I had this argument with somebody was in the shop, and they're like, you could really speed that up if you want. I'm like, I'm making 2 things and I have all week to make them.
Yeah. Right.
I don't need to run it faster. I don't care. At this rate, I don't need to put on earmuffs. If we speed it up, then all of a sudden I got to wear earmuffs. It's fine. But by the way, cones is just an old school way of pottery, and Bob, you know this, and Dave, you probably know this. They make these ceramic cones, and when the cone melts, there's different cones at different categories. you stick them in the old kiln, whether you were firing it with regular wood or whether you're firing it with electric. Back in the day, you didn't have these high-tech controllers which could get you right to the temperature and stop. So you put these little ceramic cones that were made by a supplier, and when the cone drooped, you knew it reached that heat. So when you say fire it at cone 6 then you put the cone in there, and then when you see it droop, I don't know enough to know. Then what do you do? Dial the heat back? I don't know. How do you control it? How do you stay in that range? I don't know.
Just blow on it.
Yeah. But that's what it was. So when someone says cone 6, it's like cone 6 is, I'm making this number up. It might be 1800 degrees. Cone 7 is 1900 degrees. And cone 8 is just, these temperature ranges aren't a lot. They're only like 100 to, within 100 or so degrees between the various cones. And then when you have something like a cone 10, that's when you're firing porcelain or something that's really, really high tech, or like a razor blade that's made out of ceramic. They're like cone 10 and 12. So it really, really turns it to like hard glass, whatever that is. But I learned all that jumping into pottery, and I'm still a little intimidated to go into pottery. I mean, I've obviously experimented with it, but not in a reliable way. I'm still always just playing in the dark, and I just have to do it more. That's all it gets down to.
Speaking of pottery, Jenny was doing pottery for a while, and then her friend that was teaching her and had a whole setup moved away, and so she hasn't really done it since then. That's been a couple of years now, but it's something we've always wanted her to be able to do.
Did you ever make a pot? Were you going to make a pottery shed? Did you, or were you going to?
No, we still want to, but it's just a matter of finding like the spot and property lines and all that stuff. But actually, the other day, I saw an article about this. What do they call it? It was like an Amazon guest house, and it was basically a small guest house that you could buy on Amazon.
Oh yeah.
And there's a few like tiny home things that people have, like Home Depot sells like a tiny house, and it's a couple of $1,000s, and it's everything
2 stories.
you need. Really?
Yeah, they sell a 2-story one for $15,000.
Oh,
but you could have dropped off. It's crazy. It's like it gets you started, and then you just spend another $5,000 to build it out, and you get a beautiful home for under $25,000.
Well, these are smaller. These are more like sheds that. But anyway, I saw one of those, and it got me thinking about trying to build some sort of little shed for her to do pottery in. But actually heard from, there's a guy that listens to the show, and Mac, and he's been talking to me about getting a kiln. He's had a kiln for a long time that he doesn't use, and so we've been talking about getting it from him from Chattanooga and all this stuff. He's coming through here in January. I'm finally going to be available for him to bring the thing to me. I didn't mean it to say it like that. So that might be the catalyst, of us. If we have a kiln that's ready to use, that might be the catalyst for us to actually make a space for her to do pottery again, which is kind of a weird thing to have it cause, or we should have figured that out before now. But up until this point, if she made something, she wouldn't be able to fire it. What's the point of, other than just practice, what's the point of making a finished thing that you can't fire and then you can't use and stuff like that? So maybe by adding another giant electricity consuming thing to our home, we'll be forced to make a place for her to do pottery again. Maybe. So.
Yeah. Well, when you make pottery, you know this, but I'm just saying out loud, there's this whole step where you actually make the clay, and then you stop. You do your whole clay you create, whether it's hand building, which is not using the wheel, or using the wheel, and then you just have to wait a week, 2 weeks. That's why if you go into any potter studio, there's stuff drying everywhere, because then once it dries, then you refire it, and then you have to let that cool, and then you put glaze on it, you fire it again. So it's a really long, it's a long several step process. That's ancient, just like casting. It's like an ancient process, which it's like some of the original making processes is pottery and casting and forging. It's like the most primitive maker technologies in humankind.
Yeah. So I hope we can get it set up, because it's something that she really enjoyed, and I would like for her to be able to get back to. Plus, selfishly, it's it's a thing that I don't know how to do. She could teach me. Not that I would want to try to. I don't want to do it as well, like as a hobby, but it would just be cool to learn another thing. But also, there's a bunch of stuff around a new process like that I get to make. Like I made a wheel already, but I would get to build this building for her to actually have this studio in. I would get to build a roller so that she could roll out flat pieces to make, plates out of and things. There's all these utensils that would be useful for her to do that hobby that I could make and I could help with. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
One of my hobbies is making spaces to have hobbies, but then not actually doing the hobby. Like seriously,
I can help you with that.
Like over here, you can't see it off camera, but I made this whole cabinet and it's got pull-out drawers and it's full of synths and drum machines, and it's all organized for wires. And I spent so much time getting it perfect so I could easily make music. And it's mostly it's a room decoration, and I've done the same thing in the shop. I made a little corner where I put a little corner desk, and it's a sit stand desk, and I made the walls real nice, so I feel like I can go out into the shop, and I have a little computer area where I can do computer stuff. I never use that corner in the shop. I do this all the time. I make spaces to use, but don't use them. Because I like making the space. I like the the idea of making something that I could use.
I mean, to be honest, I'm with you. I like setting things up.
Yeah. It's weird.
Like,
yeah.
It's not weird. It's a part of the process, because there's a lot of people who don't want to set up the area. Mm-hmm. They just want to do the thing. It's it's just two parts of the same long process. But I don't know how many 3D printing stations I've made where it's just like, okay, now this is the 3D printing one, and I'm going to put them here, and I'm going to, know, and then I get another printer, and I'm like, well, that doesn't work anymore. How can I? I'm doing the same thing right now. I've got a new printer showing up today, and I've been for 2 weeks going, how can I change this area so that my station is what it needs to be?
That's one of the things that I'm working on right now is a place for the resin printer to just make it a little bit easier because there's a lot of post-processing. I want to make that as simple and as clean and as less messy as possible. So right now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I need a drawer here, I need a space here, I need a tub here and a light here, and I can do all this stuff, and it'll be so easy for me. And then I'll probably get it.
And that'll be the last one you'll ever have to.
Yeah.
All right, so we're like almost an hour in. We didn't get to the topic for at least the third, maybe fourth week, which is fine. So we'll just keep, we'll talk about being old men eventually. But before we wrap up, I don't think we're going to record next week because I want to take a week off of everything.
Yes.
So before we wrap up for the year, for the show, is there anything else you're trying to accomplish this year in 23, next couple of weeks? Is there anything that you're just wanting to like check off the list, get it out of the way, be done with it, anything like that?
I want to finish my barn. So if I have about 2 weeks to finish the barn, I only need about another $50,000. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, everybody buy a bag.
$50,000.
Everybody buy a bag. Buy a leather bag. Now the barn is moving along, and I'll do an update. I'm kind of associating the barn with the graveyard house build, so I'm going to do an update each time inside the end of the graveyard house build. They're kind of similar like topics. But what do I want to accomplish by the end of the year? I'm just happy. Everything's going well, and I'm just thankful that I still get to do this. A buddy of mine sent me a thing the other day about metal spinning. He's like, you know what you should do? You should do metal spinning. And I went and I found the very first bell, which is an odd week to remember that I did metal spinning. I made a little tiny bell with metal spinning. Made a bell out of a piece of material that was like 4 inches in diameter. And I made the form, and then I formed the bell over the form. And then that's the bell that's in my little dog house where my little Woody climbed inside and rang the bell when he stepped inside the schoolhouse doghouse.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was 10 years ago. So that's what I posted the other day. So it's funny how I've been at this for 12 years. And then I got another reminder. It's like, hey, remember doing this? It was like a Facebook thing. was like, wow, that was 12 years ago. I still feel like I'm new in this game, new to this whole life. So, and this whole life for me started at 45 years old. So if you're out there trying to figure out your career, it's never too late.
Never too late.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to finish my commitments that I have. So I still haven't finished our wedding rings that we're due in October. I'm almost done, but I just got a little bit further to go. I want to get that done before Christmas, but I might not. I don't think I'll have time. I've got 2 Squarespace videos that have to come out before the end of the month. It's December 20th right now. I have 11 days to finish up those 2 videos. I wanted to make my mom a plant stand for Christmas. I just want to get these. I just can't wait for January 1st because it's going to feel like, I'm done. I can start over.
So your break is in January, not now.
Not now. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, for me, I don't know that there's anything specific I need to finish up before the end of the year. I mean, I think I'm actually ahead on videos, which is kind of cool. And so it's a perfect time to take a week or so off and just relax and hang out with the family and stuff. And I'm going to do that. But I also I'm kind of energized by the momentum of being ahead, you know? And I want to keep being productive. I think the thing that I actually want to accomplish before the end of the year is taking some of the ideas that I've started playing with and have just needed more thought and actually giving them the thought that they need. I think specifically these little trays that I was talking about, they're really close to being enough. And I just want to like spend an afternoon and think through them, finish the modeling, and then print a whole bunch of tests. And some guy asked for the files, and I responded like, "Hey, I'll happily send you the files if you promise to print them out and then give me feedback on like actual use, because I really do want this to be a little system of things that could be useful for people. But I'm only one perspective on that, so you know I'm trying to get some feedback because I just want to wrap them up and have a little useful thing that can then be out there. So I think for me it's wrapping up ideas that just need a little bit more finesse rather than like another project to try to fit in or anything like that. So yeah.
In the after show, we should tell each other when the weekly time that we're supposed to set aside for our hobbies.
That's right.
Oh yeah,
that's right. Oops.
Oh,
yeah. We start at the beginning of the year.
I did start though.
Okay.
I did start. Actually one of my video things is about that. So yes.
Okay.
We will talk about that for sure. I just have this on my desk. I just want to show it real quick because look at this thing. So the other day I saw Aaron Draplin. I don't know if this is new. I don't think it's new. Somebody posted about it. But he has these aluminum conversion charts, and he has a couple different sizes, a couple different colors, but it's fractional and decimal down to like 64ths fractional, and it's just an equivalent chart. And they're really nicely made. They're not very expensive. I ordered a couple of them just to kind of put in the shop. I really like his design style. We've talked about him before. And these were just a cool little thing to be usable. So, and I've got stickers from Chris Zepp that have basically all the same information on them. I keep those around and everything too. But these are just really nice looking. And so I was going to show you those in case you ever want to do that.
Am I allowed to?
Could you drop a picture in the? Can you drop a picture in the chat just so I can take a close look?
Yeah, sure.
You're coming through Pixelate. I'm interested.
Oh yeah. They're nice looking. I got the orange anodized aluminum. There's a silver, one too that's silver. It just looks more plain. But it looks like something that would be riveted to the side of a machine.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. And his stuff is always inspiring to me from a really interesting perspective. That like it's so simple. I feel like a lot of times inspiring things are exceptionally unique or exceptionally a step outside of what you see. And his stuff is so, like, I don't know. I don't know the word for it.
Well designed.
Standard. It's like, it's so, I don't know.
If I may plug my own
this
self for just a second, I have a poster that is a fraction to decimal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if I may plug my own self, I've got a full poster with that chart on there, and I also sell notebooks with the chart printed on there too. So that was a very shameful plug.
Shameful.
Probably not as good.
Yeah,
as
we've talked about doing something like this for a long time too. This is really nice looking. I like this. Cool.
And I use it all the time.
Well, since we're
since
we're doing shameful plugs, can I do one too?
It'll make me feel better.
So, a couple weeks ago, we kind of soft launched an Arduino kit. So we, instead of just rebranding an Arduino kit from China, which we looked into, but it was just, I don't know, it wasn't all the right stuff. So we found a company to work with to put together a kit of electronics that are specific. Like, I picked all of the items that are in the kit. And so I made this kit of the things that I use all the time, and then some general stuff as well. But we made it as an accompaniment for our Arduino course. And so it is everything that you need to go through all the lessons. And you can get these things piecemeal. You can buy them separately. You can, it's not like you have to have this, but I just try to, I don't know what the word is, put all of this stuff into one box, all the stuff that I use all the time. It's in all the projects and everything. And so we made 100 of them as a starting point, and we've sold a lot of them to the people who bought the course and just people who are on the mailing list and stuff, all that already. But if you want an Arduino kit from us, they're available. I'll put a link in the show notes, and you probably too late to get them for Christmas now, but they do ship in like 2 days from California, so they're pretty quick. Anyway, that's a new thing that we're trying out.
Nice.
And since you guys are talking, I was going to just clear up the reason the leather bags are not on the website, because a lot of people can't find them. They're not on the website, and that's why I just keep saying DM me for quotes, is because they're in a couple of stores, so I don't want to compete with their pricing publicly, in case people realize it, because they're more expensive than they are from. If you buy them from me, they're cheap. If you buy them from these stores, and nobody I know would be in these stores, they're kind of high-end stores, they're double the price. So I'm selling them directly. And
Gotcha.
Also, it's just cuts out any confusion. If there's any issue with the color or the shape and the questions, they're on the website. I would have to answer through my guys there. It's just easy to go directly here. So, And then they're limited in quantity, so I have some days less, other days. So this way you could talk to me intimately. I could send you pictures of exactly what's available, and that's why.
Do they have any sort of, not that you need to do this, I'm just curious, do they have any sort of like numbering on them, or a
No, a couple of people said I should number them, but I haven't. I'm just selling them.
Yeah.
I can go through my, because every time I send something to somebody, I always photograph it and send it to them. I was like, this is the one you're getting. So
you should stamp like 1/100 on all of them. So it looks like they're all or like 2/100.
Makes it seem a little bit more real.
No.
Yeah.
I do have an ongoing list on the refrigerator. Every time I put one in the mail, I write who it was for and the date. So up to about 20 right now.
Wow. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm going to thank our Patreon supporters for the year. You guys find something to recommend. Last recommendation for the year, so it better be a doozy.
I got a good one.
Not really. Big thanks to everybody on Patreon that supported the show this year, whether you're still doing it or you did it for a while. We're very grateful. I had a conversation this past week again about advertising on this show, and it's just not worthwhile. It's just not worthwhile to do that to the listeners when we have the support that we have through Patreon. So I'm grateful. You all, the people who are supporting on Patreon, make the show better for everybody who's not. I'll point that out because we're not reading ads and everything. So big thanks to them for helping us and helping everybody else. It's great. The top supporters, people who go above and beyond: Crabtree Creative, Web Ranch Specialties, Michael Manedjan, Warren Works, The New Janky Workshop, Scott at Dad It Yourself DIY, Sean Beckner, Odin Leather Goods, Rich at Low End Designs. Low End Design. I always put an S there, and there's not. Sorry, Rich. Chad's Custom Creations. There's 2 S's there, so it evens out. Chad for Mancrafting, Works by Solo, Albert's Woodworks, Corey Ward, and Nick Ryan. Big thanks to them for going above and beyond, but also...
Nick Ryan has a bag.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. He bought a black one.
Awesome.
For himself, for his tools.
Oh, right on. Also, Gordon Crago? He's one of our supporters. Grateful for Gordon, too.
You.
So. And if you want to get the after show... actually, there was a question about the after show this week, and I don't know that I responded to it yet. If you're listening, if you are a Patreon supporter, when you go to Patreon, in the top right of the page, there should be a link to the RSS feed for the after show. So you can put that RSS feed in your player. You don't have to listen to it on Patreon. I need to make sure I respond to that question. But you can listen to it like you listen to this show, so go do that. But anyway, big thanks to everybody over there. If you want the after show, you can go to patreon.com/makingit. Help us out. Jump on for the new year. We'd appreciate it. Again, there will be no show next week because we're going to take some time off. Do you guys have anything to recommend?
I sent you how the Titanic engine works.
Oh.
What is it by? I can't remember the name of the channel.
46,000 horsepower.
How does the engine in the Titanic work? Have you ever been curious about that?
Wow. No. But
there's 3 engines, and by Ocean Liner Designs. And this guy goes into deep dive, and he has really good 3D modeling. You fly through the Titanic. I mean, top notch, like as good as like you'd see on the History Channel or Discovery Channel. This guy's great. Fly-throughs of the engine rooms and the amount of people it took, the amount of coal, it's just colossus. It's amazing. And all the steamliners were basically done the same way. This is obviously a little bit ramped up because it's the Titanic and everything was just slightly bigger, but this is how these ocean liners crossed the ocean, by steam. And the steam had to be
That's wild.
created by boilers that had to be hand-fed. They have 150 men constantly hand-feeding these boilers in shifts. They could only work 4 hours
in
at
an
a time.
environment cold enough to have icebergs.
But it was so hot down there.
That's
because
wild.
you're like literally in the fire constantly. You're feet away from this fire and feeding. They can only work 4 hours at a time because it got up to 120 degrees in these rooms.
Wow.
It's unbelievable the amount of human ingenuity and technology that went into these things. Before computers, it was all hand drawn.
Crazy.
And these giant steam pistons.
So
What you got, David?
my pick is a video called "The Story Behind One of the Most Complicated Ads in History." I got 2 screens. If it looks like I'm on video that I can't see what I'm doing, I've got my laptop in front of my other screen, and I was trying to see what. Never mind. The video is called "The Story Behind One of the Most Complicated Ads in History." Back in 2003, Honda made this Rube Goldberg ad where all these different car parts fall into another one and creates a chain reaction, and then what sets this car off of a ramp. And it's a really, really cool commercial.
I remember that.
And this is like a behind the scenes of that, and it's fantastic. It's just the engineering that went into making this commercial is just phenomenal.
Cool. Right on. I got 2. Man, that is quite a title. The story behind one of the most complicated ads in history. That's yeah. So I have 2. One is, there's a guy named Adam Mormelstein. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's how it's spelled. And I started following him on YouTube years ago when I was doing music stuff on YouTube. And he puts out like 1 video a year, or at least he has for the past several years. And it's just a Christmas song. He's a musician, and so he'll do like a full song where he plays all the instruments, he plays everything and sings and stuff. And So I forget about him all year long, and then a Christmas song like pops up at the end of the year, and it's delightful. It's just, he's great. It's just, he's really good. The music's fun and well made, and so he put out Santa Claus is Coming to Town yesterday or the day before or something like that, and it's just really good. It's fun to watch somebody be really good at stuff, and he's really good at stuff. So it's a nice surprise when they show up. The other one is about our accountability thing. After last week, I started looking for some cello videos so I could get back into playing cello. And I found a channel. Huh?
Cello. Saying cello.
Yeah, I know you are. I found a channel called Adult Cello. It's called Adult Cello, and it's a guy just teaching cello for free. I think he has like an online course and stuff too, but he has just a bunch of videos teaching basic cello stuff, which is really cool because I haven't done it since college. So, remembering how to tune properly and the grip and all this stuff, and it's nice to have reasonably short videos. Somebody who just is explaining it. It's not overly complicated and snotty, and it's not one of those, Yeah. I watched a harp video one time. I don't know why. It was for some other purpose, but the person trying to teach how to play harp was very happy with themselves that they knew how to play harp and nobody else did. And it was one of those weird, why would you learn from a person like this? Because they're not really they're trying to teach you that they know how to play cello rather than to teach you.
It's not Emily Hopkins, is it?
Anyway.
Because
I don't know it was years ago.
She's a harp player, and she has an amazing YouTube channel, and she's just phenomenal at the harp. But she has a lot of her videos are kind of she runs a lot of guitar pedals through the harp, and so they're very experimental, and there's kind of a very dry humor in a lot of them, and sometimes there's kind of an attitude. A lot of times there's kind of an attitude. So I don't know if it was one of her older videos, but it's if it is, it's just her thing.
Gotcha. It could have been. I do remember watching somebody that played a cello or a harp through guitar pedals. I don't know if it was the same person or not, though. But anyway, adult cello. If you're interested in learning cello,
adult cello sounds so like I just picture a dude naked, and like.
Huh. Well, it's not that.
That's crazy. So just another quick little anecdote. So this week we started cleaning out my dad's house. So I went out there, and my dad was a hoarder, and not a joke. He was a hoarder. He's a real hoarder, and so he's lots of stuff that just goes right in the garbage. Stuff that's really unnecessary. Multiples of the same thing that are unnecessary. This is not an exaggeration. I found about 40 remote controls in his TV room, which is the first room we cleaned out. Me and Rob, my assistant, went down there, Rob Rojas, and we cleaned out the front room, put it all in the front yard, called Facebook Market free. People came, took about 50% of it. Books and DVDs and all stuff that you can get online now. Gave away about 30 calculators that were just randomly in cushions and stuff, and then remote controls. And I saved all the remote controls because they're all from Cablevision. I don't know how he got 40 remote controls from Cablevision. He must have just kept calling up and saying, I lost my remote control. Could you send me another one? I don't know how. They're all Cablevision remote controls. Some of them are still in the sealed bag with the batteries. Crazy. But I found a thumb drive under the couch and 3 hearing aids, which he kept complaining that he would lose his hearing aids. I found them under the couch. On this thumb drive is from 2014. My nephew now is like 20. No, so some of the stuff was from like 2006. I don't know. My nephew was like 4 or 5 years old on it. He's 21 now. And on there's 7 or 8 clips of him playing the trumpet. My nephew's an accomplished trumpet player, my sister's son, Dylan. And in there, I'm like, if this 5-year-old kid could be playing scales, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to. So it was like a message from above. You need to start practicing your scales. And
okay.
So awesome. Based on our accountability buddy situation, I got reminded that even 5-year-olds can play scales, and He's a drummer, guitar player. He's a little bit virtuoso, my sister's son. And my brother-in-law, his dad, is a very accomplished drummer. He does like studio work, and he's one of these guys that constantly goes. He'll like travel to go to my brother-in-law Dan, and there's videos of Dan and Dylan playing together, and he's just a little kid. It's funny. Dan's on the piano,
Cool.
and Dylan's playing the trumpet or the drums. It's cool. So yeah, that was just a reminder.
Yeah,
That I
that's great.
need to get my trumpet and dust it off.
Cool.
As if I ever knew how to do anything with it.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for listening this year, everybody. We're very grateful, and hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays,
everybody.
and we'll see you in
Thank you.
January.
Thank you,
We'll see you soon.
guys. Thank you. Love you. Goodbye, 23.
Another voice to be done.
What is it about this algorithm?
Okay, you should do that voice, but don't say who you're imitating.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the show, people can understand or send in their thoughts on who you're imitating.
Everybody that knew him is long gone except for me.
Yeah, that's
And you.
the problem.
Yeah.
Why does everybody die?